Good evening. As we come here together this evening, we are primarily located within the ancestral and treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations and the Anishinaabe peoples. Throughout history, this land and these waters have also been home to the Haudenosaunee peoples, people of the deer, as well as the Haudeshonais from the south and the Anishinaabes and the Métis from the north. We offer respect as we strengthen our relationships with them. We express our gratitude for sharing these lands and that our vast country to our mutual benefit. My name is Tracy Curtis. I am your host for the Finding Your COVID Balance seminars, which we've started many, many months ago. I'm honored to be here with these incredible group of women that are all volunteering their time. Everybody has had a very stressful day and come home, grabbed a quick bite to eat and hopefully maybe a glass of wine to be able to be with us all here tonight to answer a few very incredible, difficult questions that we're having through this challenging time. So I would just personally like to thank my friends here that are here for volunteering their time and being with us tonight. So I represent Bracelet of Hope, which is a charity that Anne-Marie Zadlik founded many years ago, and that's located in Lesotho in South Africa. In the continent of South Africa. So I am a board member and have been on the board for many years. And so I just wanted to give you an update and a gratitude for Bracelet of Hope. So there are many Facebook followers out there that have donated to Anne-Marie's posts. And we want to thank you so much for those donations. I would like to share just a little bit about how that is being utilized and the incredible work that is being done in Lesotho with your heart and donations. So we are actually launching a second mobile health unit. So we have foster children in Lesotho that have lost one or both parents to the HIV/AIDS crisis. And we launched a mobile health unit in March of 2020. And we're actually just launching our second one, thanks to you. So these are mobile units that initially were testing and treating people for HIV/AIDS. And it has pivoted, to use that word, now vaccinating people in Lesotho against COVID, but not just vaccinating, but also educating. So what an incredible thing that is. Africa has a long way to go, as we all know. It's just been such an emotional crisis as well for them, for having the virus, the Omicron virus starting in South Africa. So it's been so hard emotionally for them, but they're only 7% vaccinated at the moment. So there's a long way to go there. And we're just very grateful for your support. So thank you so much for that. I would like to introduce you to Marva Wisdom, and Marva's going to do a formal introduction for our other two panelists. So Marva is an incredible community leader. Her quote is, "We get leadership that we deserve," and Marva Wisdom has set to broaden and deepen our citizens' engagement to our civil society. So Marva facilitates effective community engagement, diversity, and inclusivity. This journey does not end with us. So from growing up as a child in rural Jamaica and moving to Stratford, Ontario as a high school student to raising her family in Guelph, Ontario, Marva has built her life on passion and social justice. Marva is a community leader who blends her personal and professional passions to help her clients and her community build on strengths with a strong collaborative team. And I can say I've seen this firsthand with sharing Rotary Club with Marva, and anything that Marva signs up for, I'm quickly to sign up right behind her, because I know it's going to be impactful and inclusive and strong and just done with grace. So thank you, Marva, so much for moderating tonight's session, and we'll take it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Good evening, everyone. Tracy, she's very modest. her role as Rotary president during the time of COVID-19 and her current role as assistant district governor has been pivotal for our community in terms of really helping Rotary be more in the community and integrating the work that is being done, especially during this difficult time. So thank you, Tracy, for your leadership. Ditto to you, my friend. And thank you also for you and Anne-Marie initiating these sessions that started last year in June. So that insight was important, and certainly with CMHA and the work that is being done with Helen, I'm going to introduce both ladies in just a moment. We're really grateful. I know our community is very grateful. Thank you to everyone who's tuning in for this each monthly webinar. Anne-Marie and Helen will be our two panelists answering your questions about the mental and physical implications of the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, Anne-Marie is a primary healthcare physician in Guelph, providing comfort and guidance to thousands during the pandemic. Anne-Marie's become quite a Facebook sensation. I don't think she likes when you say that, but I know that the information that she shares has been so critical to many of us, giving us comfort and information that we need. Through her posts, she provides so much encouragement. Her sound scientific knowledge about COVID-19 has been extremely helpful toward each one of us as community members. And then, as we know, going forward, the implications on our mental health has been something that cannot be understated. And Helen Fishburne, as the CEO of the Canadian Mental Health Association of Waterloo Wellington, has been a lifelong advocate for increased awareness of mental health issues and has dedicated her career to advancing the design of an improved mental health care system. And I can say I've had an opportunity to work with Helen outside of these webinars as well, with the impact program and police, and really working on how do you infuse equity and inclusion in our community in mental health. So I thank both amazing women and Tracy. And of course, in the background, we have Allison in the background tonight, pinch hitting. Without her, you wouldn't have this. And so I'm going to turn it over to Anne-Marie and Helen. And before that, I want to share a few housekeeping rules. You may be joining us by Zoom, or you could be on the Facebook Live broadcast. We want to receive all of your questions and answer as many as possible. Please indicate and put your questions in the Q&A section of either Zoom or Facebook. And if we're not able to answer the questions that we can't answer tonight, we will work on posting the answers to some of those questions sometime afterwards. But we have a little thing called Christmas holidays coming up, so we might be a little bit slow on the draw, but any question that's critical, we'll make sure we'll get the answers to you. We are recording the webinar, and it will be posted on CMHA's Waterloo Wellington webpage and on Anne-Marie's Facebook pages as well. So let us start this discussion tonight, and I'm going to ask Helen first for opening remarks, and then Anne-Marie, and then we'll move to the questions from you. Helen, please.
Thanks so much, Marva, and hi, everyone. As we have done every single Finding the Balance webinar, we lay it all out for you so we can make sense of things and try and find our way through it together. So let's be honest about where we are right now. We are exhausted, fed up, discouraged, pissed off, fearful, frustrated, and frankly, we're just sick to death of COVID. We did not expect to be here after finding comfort in our high rates of vaccination locally. We thought we could see the finish line, but sadly, COVID is not sick of us yet. It has outsmarted us at a time when our personal resilience is at an all-time low. So we must gear up for another battle because we're not going to let COVID get the best of us. That means putting on our mental armor, masking, rolling up our sleeve to get boosted, and yes, sadly, keeping our holiday parties very small. It sure doesn't feel very festive, but it will keep us all safe. So yes, we're tired, but we are not giving up. That's our agenda tonight.
Thanks, Helen. I'll just jump in, Marva. Okay, so I'm just going to be very brief because I think we need to get to the Q&A fairly quickly. I've noticed in some of the questions so far that people are asking questions about their particular circumstances after exposure to COVID-19 or if they have COVID-19. And I would really like to discuss those individual circumstances because we'll all learn from them. Tonight, we have to get back to basics, and we will get through this for sure. We will get through this in much better shape if right now we go back to basics. And that means vaccinate, capacity for that will increase. Masks, fit and filtration, we will talk about that. Home, if you are sick, this is huge. I really would like to discuss this. Home, if you're sick, you have symptoms, you stay home. Small gatherings over Christmas, we'll talk about that too, because you want to protect the vulnerable, you want to protect our healthcare system, and you want to protect our economy. And there's hope on the horizon. There's still hope.
Yes, absolutely. There's hope. So let's get in here and talk a little bit about hope, starting with some questions. And the first question that I have here is, how can we safely have a gathering with 10 people over the holidays? Is it safe to sit at the same table for Christmas dinner? Or should it be spread out in 2 rooms to make more space? Emery?
Okay, yes, just said the second time round. So this is changing every day. And the circumstances under which this is safe to do, gathering with 10 or fewer, those circumstances are getting fewer and fewer and fewer. If you've all been vaccinated 3 times in that gathering and you're all 10 days post your last vaccine, the 3rd one, and you're all asymptomatic and you can separate and wear masks inside, that's when I think the indoor gathering is safe. Some people would say that right now it's not safe to gather indoors with people who are outside your bubble, and in particular with people who might be vulnerable. But there is a way to do that. Unfortunately, there is risk if you only have 2 vaccines instead of 3.
Thank you for that, Emery. That was very, very, very clear. I hope everyone was able to listen and hear what you just shared. I'm sure that a close question to that will come up again later on.
Yeah.
Helen, this person says that I'm suffering from pandemic fatigue. If people aren't getting really sick from this Omicron variant, why do we have to take such drastic precautions?
It's a really good question, and I think one that's come up a lot since Omicron has been part of our culture. Here's what I would like to say about Omicron. There's still a lot that we don't know. It's still being studied really carefully. So worst case scenario, if people do become very ill and our hospitals fill up, that's a really, really dangerous thing for our system. You know, for anyone who needs healthcare, we absolutely want to prevent our hospital system capacity from reaching the upper limit. So that is worst case scenario. Best case scenario for Omicron means that a lot of people get it, but they don't get that sick. But frankly, that's still not a good situation. When you think about the increasing number of cases we have locally, how many people are connected to each of those people infected or their high-risk contacts, it's a massive disruption in our community. There's, lost time at school, lost time at work, disruption in our families, our businesses, our economy, not to mention the mental health impact, which is actually the largest reach. So really our best strategy is very much what Emery has just talked about, the very, very simple basics that we all really need to go back to with vigilance to really prevent Omicron. So it may not seem like it's that serious, but the level of disruption and distress is actually very serious.
Thank you, Helen. Emery, there's lots of confusion about masks. This person has said, I can't afford KN95. What can we do to stay safe without paying more than $50 for masks?
Great question. So I spent the day with my nurse practitioner vaccinating 85 people today. And I watched the women mainly, they have to come in and put a surgical mask on, which is the loop mask, not the KN95. And our faces are smaller, usually women, and the masks gape. So there are gaps in those masks. So the key is most people can't afford a KN95. And even if you could, you can't find them right now. If you have a surgical loop mask, that's better than a cloth mask. If you have a surgical loop mask and a cloth mask, triple layered, put that over top, that's really good protection. If you don't have access to a surgical loop mask or a KN95, right, which many of us won't because they're hard to find right now or they're expensive, then put 2 cloth masks on. The first mask, I think, should be a 3-layer mask with a polypropylene layer in the middle. And then the second mask over top of that, a double layer mask is fine. The powers that be will tell you right now, and if you go on the Health Canada or Public Health website, they will say that material masks or cloth masks aren't good enough against Omicron. That may be true, but many people in the general community don't have any other options right now. And I do think that anything that protects you multiple layers over your face is certainly better than nothing.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Helen, I'm very worried about my 16-year-old daughter, says one of our callers. If schools don't go back in January, I think the lockdown will put her over the edge. What can we do to keep the sanity of our teenagers who haven't experienced anything normal about school?
Yeah, we're certainly very worried about our kids and youth. I mean, I think everyone knows at CMHA, where we have a children's mental health service, we've seen really high calls and volumes and very worried parents. And of course, kids who've really struggled through a lot of the changes through the pandemic. Keeping kids in school is absolutely ideal. I know if you listen to Dr. Kieran Moore, our Chief Medical Officer of Health for Ontario yesterday, he is absolutely committed to continuing to try and keep kids in school. And that's a goal for all of us, where they can feel safe, keep their routines. So we know that regardless, they're still experiencing the stress of this pandemic, even if they are at school. What we want to really do is help our kids understand what the stress is about. And sometimes kids are good at telling us and we're able to help them with it. And sometimes they're not quite as forthcoming. Either they can't put words to it or they just don't want to talk about it. So I really encourage parents to look for any kind of marked change in their child's mood or behavior due to anxiety or worry. Stressed kids can present as quite irritable, avoidant, or even withdrawn. And stress can manifest itself physically as well. We know kids can have headaches, muscle pains, stomach pains, and some difficulty sleeping. So those are things to look out for. It's really helpful to try and unpack with your kids what is at the root of their stress. Be curious, try and give your kids some space and time to talk about what's bothering them. Sometimes parents jump to what we think it is. Maybe they're worried about their marks or getting their papers in, when it actually could be an issue with their peers that we just don't know about. So really doing a lot of listening and acknowledging is important, and then helping them unpack that. Focus on problem solving, which of course is a great lifelong skill, but breaking down the problem when you're trying to solve it into pieces, and work with one piece at a time so it's not overwhelming. Keep the conversation open, and also really validate how stressful this is for everyone, and that how resilient and amazing our kids are in terms of what they've been through. So we want to come from a place of strength as well. When in doubt, call your family doctor. If you're worried, call us at CMHA. We have a walk-in service for children that you can come and meet with one of our therapists. And you don't always have to bring your child as well. We can just work with you around what you're seeing with your child and provide some advice and direction as well.
Thank you, Helen. And building on that, how does one know when their poor mental health needs formal help, whether it be your teenager or you yourself as a parent or just an adult walking around trying to navigate this?
This is a really important question, Marva. So I'm really glad that it's been asked. And I actually get this question a lot. So first of all, I always remind everyone, if there is ever a crisis, you never wait. If you're worried about someone's wellness, if you think they might be having suicidal thoughts, absolutely call us at Here 24/7, call 911, whatever you need to do in that moment, but never, never wait in a crisis. If it's not a crisis, here's some things to think about in terms of whether it's time to reach out. If your concern is affecting your overall quality of life, right? So you're staying home from work, you're not engaging with your friends, you just don't have the energy, that's a reason. If you tried to fix your own kind of thoughts, feelings, worries, and it's not working. And by the way, many of us need help for a lot of things, right? We wouldn't think about fixing our own toothache or fixing our own muffler. So we reach out for other things. Mental health is no different. If your relationships are becoming strained, we might be relying on other family members or friends a bit too much, or actually withdrawing, not relying on them enough. And those are times where it's helpful to reach out. And of course, if you're finding unhealthy ways to cope, right? You might be relying on drinking or other things, overeating. And the other thing to think about, Marva, is regulating your emotions. So if some small thing is triggering a very big emotion, might be crying or anger or road rage, that's also a sign that it's time for you to check in and get some help. So don't wait. Don't wait until it gets really, unmanageable. Look for some of those signs and actually make that call. You're going to feel so much better.
And of course, sometimes a good cry can be good.
Absolutely.
Right? So
and who doesn't need help right now? Like this is almost 2 years, right, of living in really, really tough circumstances and really prolonged stress. So everyone is carrying more stress and more worry than they've ever had to.
Absolutely. One of the things, thank you for that, Helen. One of the things I wanted to remind folks of, we're only going till 8 o'clock today, more likely than not. We may go a little bit longer, but we will see. But we planned for an hour so we can get everybody off and doing what they need to be doing to get back to a little bit of normalcy, right? I have a couple of questions for you, Anne-Marie. When can we expect that kids under 18 will be able to access the booster? That's question 1. Question 2, which is separate. How long from exposure to being sick? And when will a rapid test catch that we are positive? So the first question is booster for under 18. And the second is rapid tests catching positive.
So I don't think a third shot for children under 18 is on the horizon soon. We have to give third doses to people at risk first, which are people over the age of 50, or even more at risk are people over the age of 65. Because we're not seeing serious illness or hospitalizations in young people, so kids under the age of 18, I don't think there will be a huge push to get that age group a third dose until the at-risk population has had a third dose. And I haven't heard anything on horizon about a third dose in that age group either. Second question, I think, was how many days after symptoms?
How long from exposure to being sick? And then when will a rapid test catch that the person is positive? So I guess how many days?
Okay.
Exposure. Yeah.
Right. So the problem with Omicron is the time between exposure and being sick is 3 or 4 days. But the amount of virus that's replicating in your system can peak before you become symptomatic, which means you can spread infection to a lot of people before you know you have symptoms. The rapid antigen test, I think that was the question about the rapid antigen test. It is accurate 3 days after exposure when you're starting to have symptoms, or 3 days after exposure if you have COVID and are asymptomatic. So those rapid tests are accurate in people who actually have COVID. They're good at telling us being positive in the presence of disease, which is the other term for that is sensitivity, but they're not good at reassuring someone who reassuring someone with a negative test result. A negative test doesn't mean you don't have COVID.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Helen, I have a general comment. It's not a question from one
Mhm.
individuals, but before we went on, and all through the week, as we're to our last week to this week, as we are looking at having this webinar session and debating whether we're able to or not, we've heard from our public health, Dr. Matthew Tannenbaum, that was on the last time with us, and certainly encouragement from Dr. Mercer, the CEO. What are some of the things that you think that we as individuals can do and the community can do to support our healthcare workers and the stress that they're going through now when they thought they'd have a break at Christmas time or over the holiday, whatever they celebrate, and now they have to be fully in front of this virus?
It's a great question, Marva, and certainly working in healthcare. I'm on health system calls every morning where we just hear of the exhaustion of our healthcare workers across the system. I know within my own staff at CMHA, we've never experienced this kind of call volumes, this kind of intensity in our community. And we always have to remember that as healthcare workers, they're people first. They have their own families, they have their own situation that they're managing, their own people that they're worried about, as well as coming to work and caring for people, either physically or mentally. And then, of course, our family doctors, who are very much at the heart of our healthcare system. It is a very heavy load for them. So if you remember at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of love for healthcare workers. People were painting stones. They were singing off of balconies. They were writing letters and cards, which was so lovely. Then it kind of went dark a little bit as the vaccines took hold, and there was quite a bit of backlash against the healthcare system, which I have to tell you was really hard while working in it, to kind of go from hero to villain. So if we can go back to really honoring the work of healthcare and recognizing the heroic efforts that they've made to keep people safe, I know it goes a very, very long way. But even more than that, Marva, following healthcare guidelines, recommendations, the very simple, basic things that Anne-Marie has laid out right at the beginning of this call is probably the biggest gift you can give to healthcare right now, because what it does is just protect the system, right, from that overload or overcapacity issue that everyone is so worried about. So, so the kindness and gratitude piece is so important, but also really following those rules and making sure that our healthcare system remains strong.
Thank you, Helen. And that really ties very much into the next question. Anne-Marie, could you speak to the change in contact tracing of high-risk contacts? There was a little bit, I think, on the news today about folks being told that they need to do this themselves to take the pressure off the healthcare system, as Helen spoke about. And the person says, namely, that it is being left up to individuals to make that contact in many health units now. And are restaurants still taking contact information from customers? And they said, thank you and Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you also.
So the reason for asking people to trace their own contacts is because there is only so much capacity in the healthcare system. There's only so much capacity that public health has to trace contacts. Okay, I'm going to say this, but don't get upset, because we are going to be okay. But we are going to see a huge increase in the number of people with COVID-19. If there is a huge number of people with COVID-19, even a small, tiny percentage still means a lot of people that may end up in hospital. Those that end up in hospital are the unvaccinated and the elderly, if they're exposed to the Omicron variant. So that still is true. But the sheer number of people who are about to test positive because this variant is now kind of running amok in our community is going to make it impossible for any healthcare organization to trace all of your contacts. I talked to several people today on the phone who all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of people with who've been exposed or who have COVID. They were all fine. They were all young people. They had a little bit of a cold, maybe a bit more than a cold, but the low risk folks are now going to be asked to please reach out to your contacts and tell them. And by contacts, we mean close contacts. So were you in a room with a person for a long period of time without a mask on, and now you find out you have COVID? That's the person you want to get in touch with. You don't have to get in touch with everybody you've worked with. It's enclosed exposure without masks on for a long period of time, more than just a few minutes, that you probably want to reach out to that person. So we're still going to be fine, but there's going to be a lot of cases, and don't be alarmed when you see that, because this thing is going to take off and has already started to take off. The second question, I don't know whether restaurants are still taking contact information. I hope they are, because you know, I don't know for sure. The reason for that was so that if public health needed to reach out to people they knew who was in the restaurant if an exposure happened to there. I think public health will still do that because that's considered a high risk exposure or a possible high risk event. So it's not like public health officials are stepping back altogether. They're going to now pick and choose which contacts to reach out to based on the risk of that exposure.
Great, thank you. Thank you for explaining that. So we are taking even more responsibility than we have in the past.
Yeah.
Which means that there's a level of trust and there's a level of kindness that we need to show toward each other by taking responsibility to reach out to individuals, even if we're not 100% certain. I was listening to something today where someone was saying, but it could have been that I was exposed 2 days later and not that day where that big event. Well, I think you have to say that it likely, whomever I've been in touch with in the last several days, and I don't know whether you put a day on there, Henry, if a person is feeling, you know, scratchy throat and cold, sneezing, and they've tested positive today, how far back do they go? Because that's sometimes the next question in the contact tracing.
So I think you want to go to the day that your symptoms started, right? The day your symptoms started is probably 3 days after you were exposed.
Okay.
So you want to go over those 3 days and all the people you may have come in contact with. That's what's important. The take-home message here is, yes, we're on our own in some ways, but not really. If you get symptoms of a cold, even if it's minor, runny nose, bit of a cough, in the next little while, you should assume that that is COVID caused by Omicron. Make that assumption, stay home, don't expose other people, stay isolated till you're 10 days after the onset of the first symptom. If you do that, you don't need to try to find a testing site because those spots will be filled up. And public health doesn't need to necessarily intervene. If you are symptomatic, but you are getting short of breath, you're getting more and more ill, you need to reach out to someone. The common cold symptoms, which is by far what most people with Omicron will have, they're okay to manage on your own, but do not manage it on your own if you're getting sicker and sicker and sicker as the days goes on. You need a test and you need to see someone in the medical profession.
Great, thank you.
Just to add to the mental health part of that, Marva, it's going to be really hard for families over the holidays, right? We're heading into the busiest social time of the year. And I think families have really needed this holiday time emotionally to come together and to celebrate and to spend some time together. But it's so important to be really honest with yourself about any symptoms you might be experiencing. The last gift you want to give your family is COVID, right?
Yes.
The best gift you want to give your family is the gift of safety. So you have to really be honest with yourself to say, I'm sorry, I can't come to that gathering. I'm not feeling well, or B, I've got a high risk exposure to someone that I know has Omicron. Just imagine how bad you would feel going to that event and then everyone in that gathering then gets COVID. Of course, nobody wants that, and nobody would intentfully do that. But we have to be so thoughtful and so careful right now and manage the disappointment that we're going to feel, because this is disappointing not to go to a family holiday party, not to see the people that we love. in person. There are other ways to see them, but we have to really, really think really carefully about it at this holiday season.
Marva, can I add something to that?
Yes,
I love
absolutely.
storytelling because human beings understand through storytelling.
Mhm.
There's a person on one of my Facebook posts who gave her story recently. Please tell us your COVID stories. If you're infected, if you've been exposed, if you have the infection, we really need to hear from you because many of us will be in the same boat over the next few months. But this woman talked about her husband and his workplace. They all worked from home all year. They got together recently for a Christmas party because it was still okay to do that, right? One person brought Omicron in, 100 people at the party, 70 tested positive for Omicron, 70. They went home and infected their families because Omicron is so transmissible. The husband who had gone to the party had lunch with a friend before he knew he was positive. That person was infected. Before the first symptoms, his friend was infected, and then that friend infected his entire family. That is what's going to happen if you bring Omicron into a gathering. Everyone will get Omicron. This is a nasty, nasty bug. We have to hunker down and be safe and protect one another. And yeah, that's going to sting big time. It's going to be so difficult. But the alternative is the scenario I just described.
Thank you for that. Someone has said while isolating, can I go for a walk? Now that we know we need to stay inside, maybe early in the day or late at night.
So if you're isolating because you have COVID, there's a difference. Quarantining because I have COVID, and in that case, it's 10 days inside, unfortunately. If you're isolating and waiting for a test, or if you're isolating because you may have come in contact, put a mask on. Yes, go outside, stay away from people, but stay a good distance away from people, and go for a walk. It's good for your health.
Yeah.
Now, there is a question here about how long Omicron might be in Canada. South Africa is thinking they have reached the crest. I am not sure that we can answer that question tonight. We don't know with certainty how long it's going to be. And yes, South Africa has reached the crest. There are a number of reasons why it has, but who knows whether that crest is going to hold. We're trying to be positive. I think we have to focus on what is sort of within our control at this moment, at this time. But maybe you have other responses to this question. I took a stab at it. What do you think, ladies? How long?
I can take a stab.
Yeah, go for it.
I think we're looking at 3 months here. I think we're going to see a very rapid increase in cases in a very short order. And then it's going to stay high until a large number of people have a third vaccine, or a large number of people have had the infection, and most of those will have a mild infection. And then we're going to see it level off and come back down. The rate at which we vaccinate will make it pass over our community more quickly. But that's what I think.
Thank you. Helen, 10-year-old grandson has a phobia about needles. What can one do to calm his fears?
A lot of kids have needle phobias, so this is definitely not unusual. And there's actually some amazing videos that you can watch on how to kind of gear your child up so that they almost feel like a bit of a superhero going into getting their vaccination. If you go on YouTube, you'll see some really cute and awesome videos that have been prepared. I think really what you want to first of all, be as calm as you can and give your child a very high level of confidence that they've got this. We need to be very honest with our kids of all ages that going into a needle is anxiety provoking, validate the feelings, but also this is a really quick pain. It feels a little bit stronger than a mosquito bite. It's going to just pinch for a moment and then be over. And then, of course, really share about what what kind of protection, and that's that superhero theme that a lot of our vaccination clinics have been using with kids, which kids really relate to and identify with. So it's a very, very small pain, very short term. You've got this. I'm going to be right by your side. Kind of comfort can you offer your child through that needle? Do they need their blanket? Do they need their teddy bear? And then, of course, there's always a reward afterwards, which the child can dictate. So those are some basic things, but they actually work really, really well. And of course, you hide your face as a parent. You don't grimace. You don't show any kind of worry for your child. You've got this and you can manage.
Thank you. Thank you, Helen. This is going to be rapid fire. I'm looking at the clock and see how
Go for it.
we have left. This is a long one, but it's an important one. And so I am just questions that have been answered already. We're moving through those. So for those individuals, you may not hear your own question asked, but it has been responded to for the most part. This person says, I have some kind of syndrome like CF, cystic fibrosis, and so have vulnerabilities for sinus and lung problems. The question is that, am I correct that I must be a hermit this season? They are using the K95 mask, they have their booster, have trouble breathing through the mask, but is still using it anyway. Do they need to be a hermit, Anne-Marie?
So I'm going to say, if you can reach out to your specialist and ask that question, you'll get a better answer than I can give you, because I don't know the details of your illness. But if it's like cystic fibrosis, your lungs don't have very much resilience. They will not be able to handle an infection with Omicron. If you can get an N95 mask and make sure that it's snug, and that means it's snug enough that if you wear glasses, you don't fog up those glasses, and you've had 3 doses, you're pretty safe. I mean, I've been seeing patients all day for the last week with an N95 mask on, and that's the mask that people use in the ICU when they're intubating a person who has Omicron, and they do get a rush of virus in their face. It's a highly protective mask.
Great. Helen, a couple wants to go to Florida. This is their question, not mine. And they want to be in their condo for 4 weeks. They have had their booster. And so they want to know, would you advise strongly against it? I'm not sure whether it's a wife or husband is looking for a yes or a no, but something tells me that one of them is looking for a decisive answer from someone else.
Well, right now, the Canadian government has strongly advised not to have non-essential travel. So that's the first thing. Of course, the borders are open. It is still a choice that people are making. In any kind of choice like this, you are always weighing out the risks and the benefits. There are physical health risks in traveling amongst Omicron. And as Anne-Marie has said, it is a very, very virulent variant. It's like, it is strong, it can travel. So you're taking a risk, there's no question. There's also the mental health side of needing to be away, needing to be taking a break, going on a vacation, which we all need, right? And so we're always, Marva, in that space where we're trying to find that sweet spot between balancing those risks. Right now, the sweet spot is about the size of a postage stamp. It is incredibly challenging to find the right answer to that. It also is very individualized, right? There might be people who are traveling who are more at risk, immunocompromised people. My parents love to travel and they would travel all over the world, but they're 85, even though they've had a 3rd booster. Not a good time for them to travel, right? So you have to look at all of these factors and all of these variables and make that decision and weigh it out. If you don't go to Florida because the risks are too high, the other question I would ask is, how can you get that break? How can you support your mental health? How can you do something that brings you joy and pleasure without putting yourself at risk?
Thank you, Helen. This one question, and there's a lot of this happening right now. My mother's in a senior's home, but I would like to bring her home. Is it safe to bring her home if I need outside help for her? 6 people per week to cover the shifts when I have unvaccinated children in the house.
think she'd be safer at the seniors home where the standards are extremely high and guidelines are extremely high. They've
I would-
learned a lot at the seniors home through this pandemic.
I would say not right now.
Mhm.
Let's get past the crest of Omicron. Let's get to the point where the amount of community spread is very much less than it is right now, or to the point where your children are vaccinated if they can be.
Thank you. If you can be more than 6 feet apart from coworkers, should you still wear a mask at all times? Answer is yes.
Now,
So in our setting, Marva, at CMHA, if you're inside the building, you're wearing a mask.
You're wearing a mask.
ask please.
Will Wellington Dufferin Guelph Public Health change the current screening checklist that school children or their parents are supposed to be completing? I think this moved a little bit. Each school day be modified to include the symptoms related to Omicron. Currently, it does not list a runny nose.
My guess is they probably will. Marva, things are changing literally daily. And they're probably going to anticipate some of that for the when schools reopen in January. I know at CMHA with our COVID screener that we have every day, we have updated it to include Omicron. I think right now the reentry of schools are a little bit on the back burner just because
Yes.
literally new information is arriving and being accommodated literally hourly. So my guess is that will be coming. I don't know that for sure, but that would be my guess.
Thank you. My adult son, who had his booster a month ago in the US, lives. He flew home on Sunday and now he has cold-like symptoms. He has tested positive with a rapid test. There are 3 others in the house, 2 with boosters and 1 double vax. He's scheduled for a PCR test. What else should we be doing? Isolating.
Yes. Yes. It would surprise me if the other members of the household have already been exposed. It would surprise me if they had not already been exposed. That's how infectious Omicron is. But if there's still time, because again, you're infectious before you're symptomatic, very infectious before you're symptomatic. If there is still time, he really has to isolate. And I'll say it, he needs to isolate in a room with good ventilation because this thing travels, right?
Absolutely. I am wondering about masking for kids. I know that you recommended layering masks in the event we don't have KN95. Kids can be a bit finicky. I am wondering about a good, secure polypropylene mask for kids. I know that my granddaughter, she wears her mask all the time. And after her great-grandparents are out of the car, she said, "Can I take the mask off now, Nanny?" She's 3 years old and that's the world that she knows. Masking.
Yeah.
You know what? I would have to look up guidelines on masking for kids right now. I don't know the answer to that question. I would have to look that up. Given the fact that cloth masks are not being recommended for adults,
Mhm.
I gotta wonder if they're not being recommended for kids too, which is unfortunate, but I would have to look that up.
Mhm. But as you said earlier, Anne Marie, you said any mask, any protection across your face is better
Yeah.
than not having something, right? If you have a double or layered cloth mask.
Yeah.
If you're a child, anyways.
My concern is that if your child is in a risky situation where they could pick up Omicron, they may just have a runny nose, but they will definitely pass it on to household contacts who might get sicker. So we're kind of stuck.
Right. As someone said, as I look at the situation in the UK, it appears that despite a huge number of cases, it is not resulting in large numbers of people in hospital. Is it possible that Omicron is the beginning of the end of the pandemic as it takes over from Delta?
Can I make a comment there, Helen?
Yes, please. Yeah, sure. So
Oh, I sure hope so. So in my mind and my knowledge of viruses, Omicron could very well be the end because of the pandemic, because it is so infectious that you will either be protected by vaccines, 3 of them, or you will be protected because you've had Omicron. And if the vast majority of the population has either had infection or they've been vaccinated, there are no more hosts for Omicron to spread to, and will drive it down to levels where it is now endemic, pops its head up every now and then, but it is not causing a huge number of hospitalizations. I wrote this down earlier. Fewer people will be hospitalized as a result of this variant because we think it causes less hospitalizations, but more will be in the hospital just because of the sheer number of people who will get the Omicron variant. So yes, I certainly hope that that comment is true, and that we will avoid filling up our hospitals, because right now your healthcare system is an absolute mess. It is very hard for us to keep up, and if we fill up our hospitals, man, you will have very little access to care for any other acute or chronic illness. Any other, it will be hard for you to fight that heart attack, fight that case of meningitis, fight that case of other pneumonia if we overwhelm our hospitals right now. They can't take it.
Helen?
Yeah, I would say that's really what we're all just really fighting hard to prevent. And that's, I think, what worries me, Marva, with some of the mental health parts of this, because there are people who think, well, don't worry about it, I'll just get a cold. And they're not thinking of the domino impact. And particularly with our vulnerable, if people who are over 50, immunocompromised, are seniors, it's like there are people who will die because of this, right? So we have to really, really protect against that in every possible way that we can.
I'll just give a bit of an imagery here. It's like right now we have to hold back the floodgates because there will be too many people infected all at once if we let it go right now. If we let the floodgates go 2 months from now, where more people have infection or more people have vaccination, we won't overwhelm our healthcare system. And then we'll see what the research tells us. But right now, it will be a tsunami because this thing is so infectious. Don't be part of the tsunami. Just stay safe. Don't spread this. Don't intentionally get it by not playing it safe.
And just, there were some questions earlier in the chat, Anne-Marie, but certainly on my health system calls, they've talked about the impact of the booster. So 2 doses of Pfizer, for example, you're going to right now have about 30% protection against Omicron. If you get that booster, you go up to almost 80%. Within that 10-day window. So that's a really huge impact, right? So that is why there is such a rush to get everyone their 3rd dose booster as soon as possible. And I know there's been a lot of frustration out there because people are really trying to schedule their booster shot and there just isn't the availability of appointments. Public health, our family doctors like Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie gave 90 vaccines today in her own practice. So many family doctors are doing their very best to mobilize for their patients. Mass vaccination clinics are getting organized. So just continue to be patient and know that those appointments are coming, but that is absolutely our best protection. And again, I continue to feel very worried for the folks that are not vaccinated because they are really sitting ducks in this, the world of Omicron.
They will get COVID, period. There is no chance. There's no chance that they will not get COVID. And I'm not being dramatic at all. Ask any scientist and epidemiologist. You will get COVID if you're not vaccinated. Can I just add to that, that if you've had 2 vaccines, just 2, your risk of being hospitalized is way, way down. So those 2 vaccines still protect you against hospitalization and severe illness. They just don't protect you from not getting COVID. And then 10 days after that 3rd dose, you are 70% protected against getting COVID and 80 to 90% protected against getting serious illness or death or dying from COVID requiring hospitalization. So vaccines are very, very important. And I was in touch with somebody high up in public health today in Guelph, Wellington, Dufferin, who said more and more doors will be opened up shortly for people to get that vaccine. But I don't think you need to be fearful of getting really sick if you're still just sitting with two and waiting for a third, right? You're going to be okay.
Right, thank you. Someone has a number of questions, but we're just going to distill it down to one. 5 to 11-year-olds, the time in between the first vaccine and the second vaccine. What is the time lag or the minimum amount of time between the first and second?
8 weeks.
8 weeks.
And I don't see that changing. Because 8 weeks gives a very robust immune response. To shorten that duration does not help the child. And given the fact that that age group is at such low risk of getting serious illness from COVID, it is by far best to wait 8 weeks. And I don't think you'll find anybody that will give it sooner than 8 weeks.
Right, thank you. Helen, how do I handle the frustration and anger I feel toward people who insist this is a conspiracy or violation of their rights, or not getting vaccinated or following safety protocols?
This is really tough. And, it's been tough, and we've seen that divide with folks all through the pandemic between vaccinated and unvaccinated. And frankly, we're going to feel that tension even more now, given how incredibly transmissible Omicron is. So what I would really say at this point is that we have to really do our best to hold that tension with that person as much as possible. We know that not everyone has received scientific training. And in fact, a lot of people have used social media to give them information, which kind of, creates that false sense of authority and confidence. They think they know the science, but it actually isn't the science or valid science. So it really is important to try and really challenge some of their thinking by encouraging them to connect with legitimate information and websites, to not delve into the dark, deep web to get their information. Also find ways to join with that person rather than immediately kind of arguing against them, right? Creating that defensiveness. Sit with them in that tension and just say, I can understand why you're concerned. We're all concerned about what we inject into our bodies. I think there's ways that you can build that bridge and continue to try and have that conversation and really try to explore what that person's fears are. We want to do that in a way that's non-judgmental, non-shaming. All of those things are really important to hold the tension. But I also know, and I've experienced this with people that I'm close to, you try and you try and you try, and that person's mind is made up. And then it becomes a mental health issue for that other person, right? Because you're getting so upset and frustrated. And there might be times you just actually have to set a boundary and kind of agree to disagree. You can still be worried for that person, but you just can't continue to spend the energy with somebody that is absolutely not open to it. Try and keep the door open if you can. Try and, build that bridge and that relationship. But if there's absolutely no room there on that bridge, then it becomes a mental health issue for you because you're just so stressed about it.
Thank you.
I think that tension's only going to get greater too, Marva.
Yes,
Sadly, as we go through this next phase of things, it's going to
be tough. And then people become afraid as well, right?
Yep. And here's the other part of that is families have to have really difficult conversations with family members who are not vaccinated about the holiday season, right? Because we are really encouraging people not to gather with people who are not vaccinated, given the risk. So that's the other really difficult and painful conversation that just needs to be handled in a very direct and sensitive, but in a very honest way.
Thank you. Anne-Marie, when do you think that vaccines will be available for children under 5?
Not anytime soon. So we're being very slow and careful with this age group. We're seeing that the immune response is not very robust after 2 doses, and holding back on giving a third to this group is probably better to tweak the vaccine than to think about 3 doses. And again, this age group is at such low risk of becoming ill from COVID that there's not a big rush to get them vaccinated.
Right. Are pregnant women at greater risk for contracting Omicron?
I don't know that they're at greater risk. I think we're all at extremely high risk, but they are at greater risk for becoming significantly ill. They should get vaccinated.
Question, why is the Moderna booster half a dose when the Pfizer booster is a full dose?
2 different vaccines.
Mhm.
They are essentially the same vaccine. They are absolutely the same in terms of how they work and how effective they are. 2 different companies that made the vaccine. It's like the Nexium tablet is, I don't know, is it yellow? And the Dexilant tablet is blue in a different shape. That's it. They're just formulated in a different way, but just as powerful one as the other.
Oh, wonderful. We are at 8:01. We can take a couple more questions. Helen, Melanie, thanks you for the clarifying with some percentages that you shared. So if someone with the booster gets infected, do they shed less virus? If so, how much?
I'm going to hand that over to Anne Marie. That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that.
So if someone with a booster, I assume
Yes.
you need a 3rd dose,
Yes. Do they shed less virus?
gets COVID, theoretically, yes, they shed less virus because they don't, their immune system is able to stop the virus from replicating to any great degree. But that all depends on age and how impressive your immune system was before you got vaccinated. And I'm not sure there's much research to that gives us an answer to that question just yet.
Right, thank you. Someone says that they have 1 AstraZeneca, 1 Pfizer, and then the Pfizer booster. How safe are they? They're 61-year-old and obese.
Very safe.
And says, thank you, ladies, for doing
I
this.
would say as safe as you can be.
You are marvelous.
Oh, you go, Liz. And going to my daughter, who's received 2 vaccines so far, but is not yet eligible to get the booster. Rules are different in Quebec. Will take the booster when it is her turn. She's really hoping by then that she will get a vaccine, which will have been upgraded to include Omicron. Will be available soon. And if we already receive our booster, will we have to have another one? I don't understand this part. Daughter received 2 vaccines already.
Yes.
Not yet eligible to get the booster.
Yeah. So she's protected with 2 vaccines. First of all, we did discuss the fact that with 2 vaccines, if you're a young person with just 2 vaccines, the chance of getting sick, infinitesimally small, right? So you're good. Will they be offered a 3rd dose? Depends on the age. I'm not sure what their actual age is. And will there be a vaccine against Omicron? Yes, eventually, but not in the near future.
Thank you. And the final question from Susan. I have been ultra safe, or Suzanne, I have been ultra safe throughout the pandemic. I have received my booster. Very concerned about my grandchildren, ages 2 and 8. The 8-year-old has 1 dose. Very concerned with members of my extended family meeting with others. The other side of the family, for instance, that we knew this was going to come with the holidays. The general feeling from most people that, but we're vaxxed, even with only 2 doses. I have tried to offer information, but I'm finding that people just don't want to hear. And so I'm concerned about the indirect contact. Helen? This is that mental health. How do you, with the family dynamic?
Absolutely. And again, you know, we're just in a whole new territory now with Omicron, right? So what we knew before is different now, just because the rules have changed. So I think it's really important to pay it. Like it sounds to me like the person that is asking this question is her gut is screaming at her, right? To say, protect yourself, be safe. It doesn't feel safe to this person, and that's a really important thing to pay attention to and to listen to. Even though you are protected with 2 doses, it isn't as much as what you can require from the third dose booster. So that third dose booster really gets you up into a higher level of protection. We also know that no matter what, no vaccine is perfect, right? We're still at risk. So we still have to follow the rules and the guidelines and protect ourselves with that. So I do think it's a very important conversation to have, and for that person to follow their gut instinct and to stay safe first and foremost. I think there are ways that you can shift your family functions and still connect with people. We've had to absolutely cancel some of our family functions over the holidays, which of course we don't want to do, no one wants to do, but it is so important to do just to protect everyone in our family. So it's heartbreaking, but it's necessary. And we also know this is temporary. It will get better. We're going to get through this phase. We will be able to come back together again. We will be able to hug each other and do all the things that we're missing to do. But right now we're just in the height of this, and we need to be able to set some limits to keep ourselves safe.
Wonderful. And I don't know whether Anne-Marie have any last words. Helen has last word. I write sometimes when I can't sleep, and I wrote this poem wee hours of this morning, between last night and this morning. And the ladies are indulging me sharing this with you because it is very much related. And thank you, Tracy, for suggesting that this would be a good idea to read this. And thanks everybody for saying yes. And I think Tracy's going to come on afterwards just to wrap things up. Tracy, I hope you will. Okay.
Yes.
There we go. I call it love at a distance, finding the balance during COVID-19. It was weeks before Christmas with plans underway to greet, eat, laugh together this special day. And then came the news that this might be trouble. Mask on, vax in, distance greeting on the double. How could this be that we would now need 3 shots to protect us before COVID-19 infect us? Our vulnerable and fragile overexposed to this Grinch of a pandemic causing no end of woes, and our healthcare providers giving us their all. We can have better outcomes if we just heed their call. Can we look to each other even from far away, knowing we are in this together helps keep sadness at bay? Can we pause, seeking answers where none can be found? Breathe deeply, reflect on little joys in the absence of sound. Uncles, aunties, cousins, in-laws, friends, and grands. They are still there in the distance, even if in virtual lands. What of the heart? It knows what we are all going through, and finding the balance is our sure way of helping me, helping you. Let's celebrate 1 person, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmas, New Year's, whatever your vibe. So, finding the balance during COVID-19, hope springs eternal from our entire team. Friends, be healthy, be well, try not to stay blue, but courageously embrace come what may in 2022. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us.
Awesome.
That was beautiful, Marva. Very well said.
Yeah. Amazing, Marva. I'm actually feeling like a little bit teary. So like I have to kind of collect myself a little bit. I was thinking while you ladies were talking, what could we do to kind of celebrate when we're through this? And I was thinking we should have an event at the Delta, like a in-person, wouldn't that be great to have like our final one that we're able to have people in a room?
Yes.
And maybe we could do a dinner or something like that and have you all as a panel and do like a last live panel. So I'm going to
Wow.
start organizing that when we get off this call,
That's
because I
good.
think that would be pretty
She's
awesome.
always coming up with these brilliant ideas, this woman.
It came from
Always.
you guys. Okay, so anyway, look out for that, everybody. So thank you so much. Just a little reminder about where you can donate to the beautiful people of Lesotho in Africa. Our website, you can visit us at Bracelet of Hope. And there you can just click online and you can donate online. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. Just a reminder that the next webinar will be Tuesday, January the 11th. And you can sign up through the CMHA website. I would like to thank the team at CMHA for always the back support and bringing us all together. They're just a wonderful team. Thank you, Helen. Such difficult days for you, and you just keep marching on. And I know you'll say it's because of the team and you do it all together, but you are the fearless leader of that team, and we're so grateful for you. And Anne-Marie, you know how much I love you. As a friend, dear friend, fellow Rotarian, my doctor, one of my best friends. So Anne-Marie, thank you so much. You're just a beautiful soul, beautiful soul. She vaccinated my entire family this week. So thank you. And my son got an injury and she even was able to look at his stitches. So, and I think you're taking him out tomorrow for him. So thank you, Anne-Marie. And Marva, thank you for the poem. And I know Marva never stays. She sleeps. I know, because we chaired Canada Day together, and I would get emails from her at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I just know that's who you are, Marva. So I hope you rest well tonight. Thank you for sharing that. And you warmed all of our hearts, which is exactly what we're supposed to be doing to keep hopeful. So much love to everybody. We'll see you on the 11th. And thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Allison, back there.
Merry
There she
Christmas.
is.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. It's awesome.
Find joy in your holidays.
Yes.
Good night, everybody.
Night. This is great.